I'm trying to pause it. Then that means that I have to shape up. Okay. Hello. Welcome to Global TV Talk Show. And Dr. Ken Lloyd, welcome again.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you, Ed, and nice to be here.
All right. John Verico is going to be joining us. That's terrific. Good guy. And okay, Otter. Hello, John.
Hi there.
Welcome. I think you met Ken Lloyd in the past.
Absolutely.
Yep. Nice to see you again, John.
Good to see you, Ken. Always love it when we're on the same program.
Here we go.
Yeah. So what is that shirt you're wearing? What is that logo? Share. Oh, that's your book, isn't it?
Oh, no, that's my company logo, Share Your Fire.
Oh, good. Okay. Share your fire. And that means everything, right? share
Yeah, absolutely.
Share your personal brand and your professional brand.
Absolutely. You want to share your why and share your motivation, and that gets other people excited and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and here is Joseph McGuire in Dublin.
Joseph, great to see you again.
Yeah, that's great. Clear
Wonderful
sight.
to see you,
Hi,
gentlemen.
Joseph.
Ken,
Yeah.
John, Ed.
Hey, welcome. Welcome. Welcome to Global TV Talk Show. We're going to be talking about branding for the next several minutes. You guys okay with time? Do you have any time constraints at the moment?
I've got
As long
1
as we're
hour,
sticking to our hour.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good. All right. And if you get sick of all this, you can just walk out anytime. There's no toll gate coming or going. Okay, so Ken, how's business?
Business is fine. All good. The book is selling. Thank you very much. And just doing some more of my work with a little bit of executive coaching and guidance for folks that just want to bounce some ideas off, and continuing my writing on various other projects. But fine individually. Obviously, big picture, everyone is so confused what's happening when you say business in the world of business in the U.S. I mean, you look at the stock market yesterday and today, it's up over 1,000 points again, as people think, well, maybe nothing's going to happen with Jerome Powell, and maybe there is going to be a turn back on some of the tariffs and so forth. Just a lot of confusion and angst and anxiety as to where things are going. So I think the idea is keep ourselves focused, make the best possibly of each day, do what we can to help, and to share that fire with others.
Yeah,
John, how's things with you?
Thanks for that great plug there, Ken. Things are going well. It's a little bit slow right now. Not a lot of people are investing in speakers to come to events. They're having a hard time actually putting events together because people are concerned about their jobs and the economy and things that are going on, and they don't want to lay out extra cash. And I'm seeing a lot of that at the moment. So I'm doing what I can and keeping the good word out in the world. We just published the Art of Connection, 365 Days of Abundance Quotes, and that book is out and on the street. I'm a co-author on that one, and I've actually pulled together 17 of the authors that have contributed to that book, and we're having a book signing this coming Saturday. And I know we're kind of timeless on this this video, just to let people know, but that's the 26th of April, 2025. So in case you're watching this next year, the book sale, the signing is over. But the reason why it's important is because people are looking for the little shine of light in the darkness. They're looking to find some inspirational messages to help them to make decisions and to not be so fearful for whatever's coming. Like Ken said, things are unsure and people don't know where things are.
So I was reading this media guide recently, and it said that people don't show their hands when they're on Zoom. And so that's why I'm putting my hands together up here, but it looks like they're magnified. Doesn't it look like my hands are giant? Wow.
You got huge hands there. But you know,
it's overwhelming. Look how big they are compared to my
Ed, your
head.
hands like this though, that's a defensive posture.
No, I was relaxed. I didn't know what to do with my hands. Yeah.
I'm Italian. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
And here's something that I've learned about Zoom, right? People who use their hands when they talk have a tendency, we normally keep our hands around here. Well, nobody can see our hands moving. They may see, an occasional thumb pop up or something, so they don't know what you're doing. And it's kind of creepy. So if you are going to talk with your hands, you want to make sure you get them up here around face height so that people understand what you're doing.
Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I aspire to be Italian, so I wave my hands a lot anyway. But that's the thing. When we meet somebody in person, the first thing we notice is where their hands are, what their hands are doing. And that goes right back to our ancient ancestry, because we had to know that people lived in small groups. They had to know if somebody coming was friend or foe, and they had to know instantly because it was a matter of life and death. And we're still hardwired to check where the hands are.
Isn't that interesting? So I was also told
this is why we wave like this and not like this.
To hold a pen in my hand so I don't fidget or scratch my nose or so. If
Well,
you
it's
see
so
me,
funny though how
gripping my
hands,
pen.
it's so funny how the hands will send messages. Like if my hand is here, I'm kind of thinking about what you're saying. I'm probably lying. and I'm full of puzzle. Well, hold on. Just without saying a thing, if someone's talking, I'm doing this, people immediately will notice that. So yeah, our hands can show enthusiasm, they can show anger and rage, and all of those messages that come out, subtle and sometimes not so subtle. So it's quite interesting. If people are not telling the truth, how they'll put things in front of them, whether they're moving things around on their desk or they'll have the hand up here. They'll like blockages to kind of protect them from someone actually finding the truth. And I know Joseph knows so much about this in terms of just what the human face will tell you about all of that as well. But you add the face and the hands, you can really start learning a great deal about people. And I know it's a great area of Joseph's. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and thank you, Ken. And even what the hands do means different things in different cultures. Like I know I've mentioned before, my partner's Chinese, and when we were talking about something before, I can't remember what the topic was, and you put up this, and she said, "Why are you making the symbol for 10?" Yeah, because the Chinese have a whole numerical system that they demonstrate with their hands, and then some countries this means positive, but in others it means negative.
Oh.
Like in Bulgaria, this is negative. That's positive. So you've got to be careful.
What are they thinking in Bulgaria? I don't understand that one. Because this is the like symbol, which we thought now is universal, right? We thought that was one of those safe ones.
Where is Bulgaria? Is that next door to Serbia?
It's not far away. It is southern Europe in that region.
Southeast.
Southeastern
Southeast,
Europe.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Is this still peace?
It depends on whether we're standing in front of you or behind you, Ken.
Well, this, back in my childhood, they had a new pain reliever out called Vanquish, and the commercial was take two and then making the V symbol with your fingers. I don't know why I know why I remember that. I remember that because the kids in school, my name is Verico. It starts with a V. And as soon as that commercial came out, everything with a V was Vanquish. So I was known as Vanquish for a while.
Well, that would be beneficial on the playground, the school playground. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I will vanquish you. Unfortunately, I didn't have the stature to back that up. I was the littlest kid in school, so.
So the
I was,
magic,
mine had an ED at the end. I was vanquished.
no, this is the magic of TV. So, so Joseph, are you spending more time in front of a camera these
Yes,
days?
yes, inevitably. There's again going back to what Ken and John were saying. There's huge uncertainty around at the moment, and a lot of my focus was on helping people with executive interviews. And there are a lot of companies simply not hiring; they're firing rather than hiring. So there's a lot less of that happening. So I'm spending a lot more time, yeah, on the on Zoom or Google Meets or whatever. And I'm actually working on a lot of collaborations at the moment because I've had to realize, given the uncertainty, I've had to broaden out what I'm doing.
Yeah. John, is your book signing virtual?
No, it's in person. I mean, we have to have physical books, and people are going to buy physical books and have real human people actually sign those books in person.
So your authors, your co-authors are all from the Lancaster area?
No, actually, some of them are driving in as far from Suffolk County, Long Island, New York. That's about a 6 hour drive.
Boy,
But
that's
it started as a local thing. There's a handful of authors in this local area that I helped to bring into this book, and a lot of them are first-time authors. There's a school teacher from York City. There's a 13-year-old who started a nonprofit. His name is Miles, Miles Murdoka, and Miles started a nonprofit called Go the Extra Miles, and it's focused on encouraging other kids his age group to get more involved in community and volunteer and such like that. So it's local folks like that. There's a real estate agent, there's a grief counselor, there's a financial advisor, and all these folks are local to my area. So I said, let's get you guys some recognition. A lot of you are first-time authors. Let's get together, do a book signing. And then some of the other co-authors who were in Maryland and Virginia said, that's not too far of a drive. If you need some more authors to bulk it up, I said, come on in. And then when Long Island, New York jumped in on it, I was really excited because I said, well, that really is saying something, that you figure it is worth your time to communicate with the public about your feelings on abundance, that you're willing to drive 6 hours for a 2 hour event.
so tell me, how did you recruit your co-authors? Or did you join somebody else's gig?
Uh, I didn't actually recruit and I didn't sell. And I think that's probably the most important thing in marketing, right? We don't get out there. If you get out there and you try to sell somebody, you get a wall or a barrier gets put up. People are looking at why they don't want to do something. But a lot of times, quite often, I just had a conversation like this, and, Ken, you've got really great things to say about your perspective of abundance. Joseph, I love what you have to say about other people and how to recognize them and how to communicate better. And, there's a book coming up for 2026, and it is The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Resilience quotes. And I think, you might want to be part of it. Take a look. Here's the opportunity. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And because it was just in casual conversation, my intent wasn't to sell. When I was talking to Joseph or Ken or even you, Ed, and we've spoken before about this book series, I never said, here, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. You need to get in on this and do it now. It was always just, hey, this might be an idea you might want to think about. And that is, I think, probably the most important thing. I only conversed with people that I thought, about the book that I thought would benefit from being in it or had something really good to say that the world should know.
Well, how do you buy that book?
You can buy it directly from me or you can go online.
And what's the name of the book again?
It's called The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Abundance Quotes. And right now we are recruiting authors for the 365 Days of Resilience Quotes for 2026.
Do you want to display the cover?
Well, it's up there on my background, but I'll do this too. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
Now,
I
now
I
the
couldn't.
Resilience Quotes book, the cover is going to be the um, the coral reef, because the coral reef is probably the epitome of resilience.
Coral reef. Wow.
Mhm.
Well, how long has coral reef been around?
Probably the beginning of since before humans came and screwed it up. I'll tell you that.
Well, so that's resilience.
That is absolute resilience.
Right. Hmm. So, what do you think it takes for a talk show host to gain resilience? John.
You know, you have resilience, Ed. You kind of are the epitome of it because you have been able to adopt as the market has changed in your profession, right? You're the grand connector as far as I'm concerned. And you used to do these things in more, in-person large scale events. And then when COVID happened and things kind of shut down, you adapted, you overcame, you found a new platform, you created these online versions of your connection programs. And I think that is the epitome of resilience right there. Being able to adapt when things are not going the way you planned.
Well, thank you. Bless you. You hear that, audience?
Yeah,
I'm still not going to ask for a registration fee. No toll gate.
yeah.
So Ken, what about resilience in from your perspective? Dr. Ken Lloyd, a PhD in organizational development and something. I forget the other word.
Whatever.
Yeah, but why don't you take over, Ken?
Yeah, resilience. I mean, we know how important that is, not just at work, but in life. We face the unexpected, we face adversity, we face challenges, we face difficulties, we face failure. And in order to make the fullest of our lives and our careers, resilience is a very important factor. And it's easy to say that. Is that go say to someone, yeah, you need to show more resilience. Well, fine, you need to show more intelligence. I mean, what can I do here? But there are things we can do if we really set our minds to it, all the way out to, Ed, you've demonstrated resilience. You've done a lot more than talk about it. And that's really what it is. It's easy to use the vocabulary, and yet we really need to make a commitment and a plan and some goals. Here's a setback. What am I going to do? And I need to set out a strategy and follow it to get there. And sometimes it's not a failure, it's a strength. You need some help. This has been so devastating. I don't see how I can handle it. I should talk to a friend, a professional, someone in the industry to kind of help me map out the best way to deal with it. It's a survival skill, but it's a skill for happiness and good feeling and enjoying more of life
Yes.
rather than focusing on the past. If we have resilience, we're looking, all right, what am I going to do to make the future better? And do I need some help to do that? And that's fine. And that's really okay. It's a smart, good, safe thing to do. So I think it's very important for individuals and for organizations to demonstrate and experience and live with resilience.
We're going to get to Joseph in just a second. If I can just follow up on your concept of resilience, but bring in the fire victims, LA fire victims. So many people have
Wow.
been wiped out emotionally. Never mind
Oh,
homeless.
absolutely. Yeah. And there is no overnight. I mean, you can't go to someone who has lost their home, all of their possessions, their neighborhood, their children's schools are now gone, as are the local shops, the temples, the churches, everything that made their community a community. And can't say, hey, you got to show some resilience here. Those who I know are actually, in many cases, seeking help. They're talking with friends. Their friends are listening to them. Friends are reaching out to help them, and a lot of them recognize, well, this is what's happened. It's tragic. It is beyond imagination to look at these communities, to look at Altadena, to look at the Palisades. It looks like Armageddon on speed. It is nothing like we thought we'd ever experience. out in this area, certainly in this part of the world. But it's happened. And those whom we know, yes, it's sad, and no one's trying to say it's not, and you got to get over it. There's none of that. It's trying to help them and having their friends and support system work with them as they go and rent, as they try to find other houses, and some of whom actually leave. My biggest concern, frankly, is certainly for the adults, with the children who've experienced this. They're coming off of virtual learning because of COVID, and now they've lost their circle of friends, their school, the home base. What must they think about life? I mean, not that anyone ever grows up with absolute certainties, but what can they really count on? And it's extremely sad. And that's where a lot of counseling and guidance is going to be needed, in particular for the young people. And I don't want to say they need to have resilience, just to handle this, to cope, and to move forward. It's extremely sad. A great question, Ed. No easy answers, but those whom we know are reaching out for friends, and not financial, but just emotional support to get through this. It's been more than devastating and quite unimaginable to see what they've gone through.
Joseph, how do you notice that someone is a fire victim, mentally health wise? Are there facial signs that would not betray them, but display them?
Yeah, not necessarily specifically to do with fire, but trauma. Absolutely. Yeah. For me, it'll be very evident in the eyes, especially, but it'll also be evident in the posture. It'll be evident in their
So
breathing
when you say the
patterns.
eyes, are you looking at sad eyes?
I'm looking at usually sad eyes, tired eyes, um, downcast eyes where the gaze is weak, or in some cases the gaze will be almost burning into you because there's such an anger at what happened. Because people will have all sorts of different responses. Some people will be absolutely devastated. Some people will be so angry, angry with the world, angry with God, whatever you want to call it. And some people will just be in a constant state of grief and tears. You can't predict how anybody is going to behave when they experience such trauma.
Is
And
that a social danger zone? It sounds like it's an imminent crisis. It's about to explode.
oh, it can be absolutely. And going back to what some of what Ken was saying there, there's a need to have good counsel and counseling available. And we need to have that available in any given group, in any given environment, society, school, regardless of what is happening or what has happened. We need to have wise people or access to wise people around us. And one other particular thing I'd like to just touch on there is when many people experience trauma or life shaking events, I won't say life shattering, but life shaking events, they withdraw into themselves. And that in itself creates further problems, not just for themselves, but it can create problems for the people around them. And so many people are of that mindset that, oh, I can't ask for help, regardless of the circumstances. And one thing I would like to put out there is that when we ask somebody for help, we're actually giving them a gift. We're allowing them or encouraging them to demonstrate their humanity and to demonstrate some of their greatest strength. And if we can see it from that perspective, it changes the pattern. And then we can get into the whole idea, okay, you've helped me and I'm back on my feet again. I can pay it forward.
John, I want to ask you, and you can redirect me if this is not appropriate. You've recently retired successfully from 40 plus years working for the federal government. There are a lot of people right now who are, I would think, under huge stress from all the stuff the show is not political, but it's about life. So, John, what's your perspective about how some of the people who you know are now experiencing this trauma, mental trauma, this displacement. And are they receiving unemployment benefits?
So as far as the unemployment benefits, I don't know. Every state operates differently how they manage unemployment. It's not a federal type of thing. But I will say that there is a lot of grief going on, and with any change, we go through the same cycle that we go through with grief, right? So a change in our environment, a change in our lifestyle, even if it's a positive one, we actually go through the grief cycle. You get this like the denial and the arguing and the all of that kind of stuff until finally you get to acceptance of whatever the change is. What's happening now is this is change that they didn't seek, this is change that they didn't ask for, and this is change for the most part in a negative way. So those folks who have lost their jobs, who've been forced out, who've spent their entire careers working for the benevolence of the people and serving the people, and that's why they went into government employment, not for personal glory. And I'm talking about the employees. I'm not talking about the politicians because that's a whole different creature. But they're going through this grief cycle. But I'm finding also that the people who are still there are going through a grief cycle. They're having to deal with increased workloads, changed workloads. Uh, their their friends have been fired. They are having to perhaps represent something they don't believe in. And now all of a sudden they're being forced to work against their own core values or against their own personal ethics. Like a lot of people in the CDC or in the health organization where where they're stopping the vaccine programs and all of that kind of stuff, and they've worked their whole career promoting these kinds of things, and now all of a sudden they're being told that they can't do that anymore. It's very, very challenging for people during this time, and this is where they've got to reach into their core and find their resilience. What do they do now? Do they just let themselves be defeated? Do they go and find something else to make themselves, to boost themselves up? Do they sit back and collect unemployment? Or do they uh, fight back in some fashion, to be successful despite what's going on around them? And I think that's where we all are in any situation, not just with the current politics, but in any situation. Life is going to, at some point, deal you a load of crap. And we have an opportunity. We have a choice to make. We can either sit around and wallow in the stench, or we can turn it into fertilizer and create something new out of it.
Amen. Joseph?
All of that. Yeah. Obviously, we're in a different situation here where it's not a case of different states having different rules. There's one funny little island here, or most of it anyway. And so the government makes the rules, and the rules apply basically across the board. And there is, as I understand it, in the US, there isn't really a safety net in terms of like social welfare, or there isn't a clearly defined one. Certainly there is here. So when people are, shall we say, removed from their employment for whatever reason, there there is a cushion for a certain period of time. So it's not going to hit people as hard. It's not necessarily going to be pleasant, obviously, but it's not going to hit people in the same way. And we're not experiencing anything like what people in the US are experiencing. Certainly in the official bodies, it's just not happening. And there's invariably, and our legal system requires a lead in before people are removed from their positions anyway. It doesn't just happen summarily. So it's a completely different environment. So for somebody coming from this environment to the US, it would be absolutely traumatic.
So from a immigration point of view, or a global employment immigration, I'm losing my mind about what words to use here, but I would think people will stay away from the U.S. Europeans will think real strongly about maybe a missed economic opportunity, but this can be
Certainly the
this can be a crazy place for people
It's not a
who
welcoming
have
place to be
more
right now.
stability.
Yeah, certainly our government has officially advised people going to the US to check their social media and to delete anything that could be seen as even potentially controversial before they go. And in fact, they're actually advising people to leave their regular phones at home, leave laptops, leave iPads, etc., tablets, and to use burner phones.
Wow.
Because we have the way the arrangement here is that people go through immigration in Dublin if they're going to the US, and you can be turned away at immigration very quickly, and that's it. You've no recourse. That's it. You're in or you're out, and it can be very petty. I know many years ago, visiting the US. Um, I have a sister in Maryland, and I was visiting her. I had been to visit her previously, and this was a visit I think about a year later. And at immigration in Dublin Airport, the guy looked at my passport, and they had a piece of paper stapled on one of the papers. They had stapled it, and there was the tiny corner left that I hadn't removed, where I hadn't removed the staple. There was nothing written on the tiny corner, but the guy was threatening to refuse me entry because of that.
Well, there's an exclamation point, that silence. Well, I'm speechless. Ken?
Even very recently, I've read that tourism from Europe, from Canada, and other countries, individual countries, is down in the US. People are just concerned about coming here for a lot for the reasoning behind what Joseph is saying as well. Whether not just to immigrate, but just to come here and visit, there's a concern. And it's already impacted the tourism industry, and it certainly will impact immigration. Then even today, I was reading that U.S. citizens have gotten incorrect messages that you better start thinking about leaving the country because of your immigration status. Oops, just didn't mean to send that out. I mean, it's right now. There's so much that's up in the air, as we talked about right in the beginning, and this is just another piece of it. Who knows where all of this will ultimately play out? I know in organizations, if you say to someone just overall, do you think it's good for businesses, organizations, governmental organizations to be efficient? And who's going to say no to that? Of course you want efficiency. But the way to deal with efficiency, if any of us were asked to come into an organization and kind of look at efficiency, we wouldn't come in there and say, all right, well, let's just go get rid of X% of people. Just throw these people out of there. It would be analysis. It would be study. What can we do? Are people in wrong positions? Do we need systems that need improvement? Do we need to redesign jobs? You don't just go in and say, all right, sure, you want efficiency?
With an
Throw out
axe.
all these people. And by the way, I've seen companies do that. And among other things, creating all the dissatisfaction, ill will, and problems internally, survivor guilt of those that are staying there.
Yes.
They've also totally undercut the effectiveness of the company by letting all of that institutional knowledge go. A lot of the people that are being thrown out have great expertise that's developed over the years of being in these organizations. And there's more to letting them go than just, oh yeah, one more job, they're out of here. These aren't jobs, these are people. Just like medical students are told, don't refer to patients. Yeah, I've got a pneumonia over in room 6, and I'm dealing with a TB over in. These are people. These are individuals.
Yes.
Treat them as humans. And the same thing applies in organizations. These aren't just so-called resources, and that's even a more complimentary term than what's typically used. These aren't just entities and jobs. These are people who bring value. Let's make sure as leaders, we're doing the best to make it satisfying for them and their organization. So wholesale cuts, whether it's done by a private equity group or by the government, by government leaders in quotes. It's just not the best thing to do for anybody or for any entity. It's not.
I think the killer on all of this, Ken, and you bring this up really well, is the fact that there was not an assessment done of the mission. What needs to be accomplished? What programs need to continue? What does it take to continue them? And then look at the resources that you have, both the financial and equipment and supplies and the humans that are there doing the actual work. And then you make a decision of what no longer needs to be done. But there's a complete disregard for the mission. There's a disregard for the services that are provided, mostly because either they don't understand or don't care about that mission. And most of the things that are being cut are the things that serve the people who are less fortunate in the country. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge. What's happening is the way we are learning to treat each other. Hate, division, and fear seem to be the new collateral. That's our new currency. It's not, imagine what the world would be like if compassion was our currency.
Trying not to be political on the show. I don't really want that. But
I know,
it's
I know.
just
So,
so
so
much
let's talk about branding.
Yes, branding.
But I mean, that's exactly it, right? It's all about what you put out there that is going to make people decide whether or not they're going to do business with you, whether or not they're going to interact with you, whether or not they're going to visit your country. All of that is based on the image that is put out there. People are going to make a decision based on the exposure that they have. So if they hear that, oh, I'm sorry, somebody of your background and culture is not welcome here, why should they come? Somebody, if your business has a bad reputation or doesn't project the same values as your customer base, you're not going to get any customers. So it's all about what our public face is. And nobody knows more about faces than Joseph, right? What are the subtle messages that people put out there, and that helps others decide whether or not to interact.
So Joseph, about faces, not about face, but about faces. um, what kind of a photo do you recommend to our TV audience out there for LinkedIn? Like a headshot, or if you're sending, like for instance, I have started to use a photo of me that I particularly enjoy looking at. But I would comb my hair properly, and I was in a tie and a coat, and had even a pocket square, and it looks like I'm Walter Cronkite, but
You're dating yourself there, Ed.
oh, I haven't had a date like that in a long time. So Joseph, I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, I'd always, if you're putting something out on social media like that, and particularly on a business platform like LinkedIn, I always recommend having the professional headshot done. Always. I've seen so many disastrous photos out there. I had one person reach out to me not that long ago to connect and wanted to have a call. And this was a health coach. And I looked at his face, and his face just radiated anger.
Mm.
I just thought, no thanks. So obviously I'm looking at things differently, but if you want to create a positive impression, regardless, get your photo taken by a good headshot professional.
Who will be your media prep?
Absolutely.
That person will coach and saying, look up here, look over there, and let's get different angles that you will select from. Because
Absolutely.
an angle, like I could put lighting on my face here, like for instance, right here, and look like I'm under arrest or something, right?
Yeah.
Or under duress.
There for you on the
Yes.
night of the 26th.
I'm glad we could laugh. So there was a march all across the U.S. People were marching this past Saturday, anti authority in the government, and therefore anti-President Trump. Thousands of people. We were caught up in it. We didn't go out to march in it. That was not our intent. But we were on the street where they were marching by, and they had, police protection all the way through. There were no incidents, thankfully. But it was really well organized, super organized, and funded by somebody. And people striking back, or speaking out, striking back, and willing to be seen and heard demonstrably in public, not just in San Diego, but in many places all across the US this past Saturday. Fascinating to be right there. At first, my heart was racing because I wasn't sure what was going to happen here, because there were police everywhere blocking traffic and guiding the marchers towards safety and continuation, not being intimidated or intimidating at all. And there were no incidences. It was all peaceful. And boy, the messages were loud and clear, not only in San Diego, but all over the country, that people are upset, afraid of what's next, and why all these danger signals are being broadcast and displayed every day, almost all day, by the news reporting, and the actuality of messaging. And then all of a sudden, woof, like in the last 2 days, everybody's playing nice and the stock market shoots up. It's like it's planned almost. The buying and selling, and all these seemingly coordinated sways, passages. It's scary.
Well, there's definitely manipulation going on out there. I mean, there's manipulation of information. There's manipulation of the way the announcements are put out there. That was, just in the beginning of the administration, there were, how many, couple of hundred executive orders thrown out there, immediately. And it was an intentional manipulation. It was intentionally designed to cause confusion, because each one of them was outrageous in its own self, right?
So it was like a smokescreen. It was a military
Let's
tactic.
just throw so much garbage out there that nobody knows what one thing to fight against. Because you want to fight against what's happening over here with the tariff, and you want to fight against what's happening here with this kind of discriminatory thing, or birthrights or whatever. But you didn't know what to get angry at, because there were 500 other things that were getting angry, to get angry about, or to worry about, or to defend against. And so this was a tactic. It's the same thing as happening with the tariffs. Whether or not the ultimate intent is to have these tariffs out there, or was it just one big bluster and an attempt to force people to pay attention, to force people to come to the bargaining table, but also look at how it manipulated the stock market. What happened was, by putting these tariffs out there, without getting them approved by Congress, by the way, but getting these things out there, the stock market just tanked, right? Everybody freaked out because they said, this is going to really impact our ability to do business. And then all of a sudden, those tariffs started to go away. Well, I'm not really going to do this. I'm not really going to do this. And then the stock market bounced back. What did that do? That allowed, sorry, it allowed all the rich people to go and buy more stock when it was down low because they had the heads up on it. There's a lot of manipulation going on, and we, the general public, wind up being the victims of it.
And the psychology, what do you think?
That's another really good question. I believe it's an old Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times." And yeah, that's where we are. Who can say what in the world, let alone in America, what's really going on? And as you look, whether you look domestically at the US, you look at what's happening in Ukraine and in the Middle East and beyond, it's so unpredictable, it's so unnerving. These are the times that we're in. If people feel that it's helpful to go out and peacefully demonstrate, that's great. I do emphasize peaceful. I'm a Berkeley grad from Berkeley in the 60s. I know about demonstrations for peace very well. But and I hope it's not naive. I've always been brought up to believe that light follows darkness and that we will get through this, whether it's through midterm elections or people pulling back or perhaps Congress stepping up more and doing things that they haven't done. But to believe that we'll get through this, to help where you can, if there are candidates that you feel you want to support or issues or actions that you want to take, you feel will productively help the country as well as help yourself to deal with this. So you're not just sitting in silence and suffering with it, then you should do so. There will be no easy answer to this other than we need to have this time go by. And I'm hoping, John, that what you're saying continues, that a lot of the stuff that's been put out there has been more trial balloons and tests and maybe moving things around, a little bit of manipulation that will get back to some state of so-called normalcy. But right now, yes, it's all up in the air. Who knows? The stock market go down 1,000 points tomorrow off of some comments or some threats or whatever. That's part of these so-called interesting times that we just all hope to get through safely and successfully and without other more dangerous developments that may occur between countries that respond a little differently to what's going on here. But in a big sense, keep the faith. And this is not a religious pitch at all, but just keep the faith that we've been through tough times before. My parents lived through the Depression and extremely difficult, but came through. And whether it's an economic or a psychological depression that we're going through, I just have to hope and believe that if we all do what we feel is right in our hearts, we'll get through this. But it's not an overnight fix. No easy answers.
Ken, you brought up that Chinese proverb or that Chinese saying, "May you live in interesting times." You call it a curse. I like that. There's another ancient, I guess, I don't know if it's a proverb or an adage, and I think it also originated in China. And it says, if you live long enough, everything will happen to you. And basically, it sounds like a sucky reason to stick around. No, but basically it means at some point, you'll be sick, you'll be well, you'll have money, you'll go through phases, right? At some point in your life, you will be the hero of a story. And another point in your life, you may be the victim. And in another point, you may wind up being the villain in somebody else's story. So everybody's going through this, right? Everybody is having all of these things happening in their lives. And you don't know where somebody else is. You don't know what they're dealing with in any given moment. So if we just learn to treat each other with a little bit more understanding and a little bit more compassion, and we go back to that word again, right? Compassion, right? Compassion is our currency. Let's like take a little bit more time to notice the people around us, reach out that helping hand, give each other that opportunity to help each other. And grow together instead of trying to be so competitive. like I said, you don't know where other people are in their cycle of life, and they don't know where you are. And so, like, just need to open our hearts and just be a little bit more compassionate and understanding. And I think that's what's confusing people right now. It seems to be that there's a streak of meanness going on and a lot of division, and people have gotten to a point where if you're this, then you're evil, and if you're that, you're not. And we've created real divisive markers now, much more than we used to be able to converse. We used to be able to have a discussion of differing opinions and then still, hang out together.
Joseph, um, I'd like to ask your opinion. We have around 10 minutes remaining here. The Holy Father passed on Easter Monday. I think that is almost breathtaking of the significance and the timing. He was visible on Easter at, with crowds seeing him, and overnight it passes. I'm struck by the beauty of that, and the obvious and heaven sent meaning to everybody, not just Catholics. Would you like to comment on that?
Bear with me
Yeah.
one moment to just ask for silence here in the room. Just bear with me a moment. Apologies there. Yes,
That was really prescient. A moment of silence at that time.
Well, yes. Well, silence can be profound anyway at the best of times. Well, I think it's timely in many ways. Obviously, he's been ill for quite some time.
Yep.
He's had a lot of health issues, so there was a certain inevitability that he was going to die, and it wasn't going to take that long. But I think it's potentially a wonderful opportunity for a lot of people to grieve. And so many people, like over the last number of years, for a variety of reasons, we have found ourselves with a pandemic of loneliness, isolation, grief at what has been lost. Ken mentioned children losing their school friends, having to go online, etc., and all that has followed since. And like psychologists are talking about a pandemic of grief and loneliness anyway. So I think it's a profound opportunity for a lot of people to grieve. And we're seeing it in, I don't spend a lot of time looking at mainstream media, but we are seeing a lot, like groups, large crowds of people actually grieving publicly. And that can be a massive blessing in itself. That's just one aspect of it, obviously. We don't know what's going to come next in terms of who might be the next pope. There are forces behind the scenes. We know that anyway. That's like the Vatican is a very political place. And we know there are forces who want to, or groupings, shall we say, who want to continue in the mode of Francis, and there are those who are strongly opposed and want a much more conservative approach. So we don't know what's going to come next. But there is a symbolism, as you say, Ed, about the timing. And if we think in terms of Easter itself, Easter is regarded as a time of resurrection. So hopefully we will see a resurrection of hope, positivity, compassion, empathy, willingness to actually communicate openly, listen to each other, share dialogue, and create, I suppose, neighborliness, or recreate neighborliness, which yes, I think we're all old enough to have experienced, and there has been, unfortunately, a lot less of it in recent times.
Thank you for that, and that was very meaningful.
I would add just one word to what Joseph said. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah,
absolutely.
This is all about branding. Sir, we took the long way around, but as human and well-meaning, and I want to thank you guys for sharing. Obviously, audience out there, this is not rehearsed, not even well organized. Thanks for being on Global TV.
We don't want to ever appear overly polished.
Have a nice day and evening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Well,
so
be
much.
well.
Thanks for creating the opportunity to have these conversations.
Absolutely. Always a joy.
Made my day. Yeah. And it's only 9:30 here, or almost 10. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.